We begin with breaking news. A fiery plane crashed in South Korea, killing 179 people, leaving just 2 survivors. Witness video shows the moment the Jeju Air jet skidded across the runway earlier today, unable to stop itself. It exploded at the end of the runway, killing nearly everyone on board. Witnesses describing the chaotic moments.
I
think it was about 9 or 8:50 a.m. I heard a bang. At first I thought it was an oil tanker accident, as we can see a lot of oil tankers nearby. Then I felt different, so I went outside and I saw a big dark smoke. Then I could hear a big explosion sound, not the one from the crash itself. Then I heard more explosion, at least 7 times.
Now, before the crash, a passenger sent this text message to a friend. "Wait a minute, we can't land because a bird or birds caught in our wing." "Since when?" the friend says. "Just now." "Should I leave my last words?" the passenger responds. Meantime, the 2 survivors, both crew members, are now in the hospital, and officials there are saying that one is now conscious and speaking with officials. The National Transportation Safety Board now saying that it is sending its leading team of investigators to assist in the case. CNN's Mike Valerio has more from Seoul.
The cataclysmic scene stunning South Korea. A Jeju Air Boeing 737-800 with 181 people aboard. The plane's landing gear, local officials saying, likely failed. The aircraft's belly scraping the pavement, coming down close to the end of the runway before crashing into an embankment and exploding. A breathtaking plume of smoke seen for hours. In its wake, hundreds of mourners, families of the dead, crowding into the arrivals hall at South Korea's Muan International Airport. The man in the white helmet tasked with naming those who would never come home. Their bodies identified with loss and unspoken farewells, too much for families to bear. "I'm going crazy," a man shouts, shattered by the calamity. According to South Korean officials, on Sunday, 8:57 a.m. local time, the flight arriving from Bangkok, Thailand, was contacted by the Muan Airport Control Tower, an air traffic controller warning of birds near the runway and a danger of potential bird strikes. 2 minutes later, at 8:59 a.m., the pilot makes a mayday call, and at 9:03 a.m., the plane crashes.
One thing that's very perplexing is the reports that are coming in that the aircraft landed without the undercarriage deployed. Now, whether or not, it's a little bit unclear whether or not the undercarriage collapsed on landing or whether the undercarriage was not deployed at all.
2 crew members miraculously survived. They were both sitting in the back of the 737-800 near the tail of the aircraft. Authorities hope the survivors can shed light on what happened. The voice in-flight data recorder also recovered.
Now, for a country that has been through so much, with martial law declared earlier this month, this catastrophe has certainly cast a new pall over South Korea, adding to the urgency to find out just how this could have happened. Mike Valerio, CNN, Seoul.
And just how this could have happened is certainly the question, and a lot to discuss. Let me bring in now my colleague, CNN's Richard Quest. Richard, good to have you. You have obviously covered your fair share of plane crashes over the years. I'm curious what your first questions are. Obviously, early days in terms of the investigation, but what are your first questions about what may have happened here?
This is one of the most perplexing accidents, and if you read the various fora and from experts, everyone is puzzled because we don't know. We sort of have got a general idea of the sequence of events from that press conference. So we know that the plane attempted to land, went past, called the Mayday, then came back. But what we don't know is where the bird strike happened, how badly it hit the aircraft, clearly catastrophically, because it was unable to deploy the various things like landing gear, flaps, thrust deploys, thrust reversers and the like. And so we don't know the exact sequence and the consequence of the various actions that took place. Why is that significant? Because if you look at the video of the plane and when it finally does come into land, number one, the landing gear has not been deployed. It's not sheared off. The doors aren't open. It's not there. Secondly, it's believed the flaps haven't been deployed. The thrust reversers haven't been deployed. It looks like the plane is landing way too fast, even in those circumstances. And it touches down on the runway very far and very late into the runway. Therefore, we can say that whatever the pilots were grappling with was in extremis. They were dealing with the most serious aspects of loss of control that barely, and here this video about, there you go. Now that video is believed to be showing the moment of bird strike. If you look at that, the plane is at a height sufficient enough where the wheels aren't down yet. So they haven't deployed the gear. Were they unable to do so? Were they basically sidetracked? Were they obsessed with what they were dealing with? We just don't know at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, Richard, as you mentioned the landing gear, we've heard a few sort of possible causes sort of floated. One, that there was a landing gear malfunction. Yeah. Two, that it was the bird strike. Three, that bad weather may have played a part. From your perspective, what's the likelihood that perhaps it was all three or a combination of the three?
No, there doesn't look like there's any bad weather there. So I wouldn't put necessarily bad weather in its clear blue skies, as you can see. The bird strike could certainly have so affected the performance of the engines that it had degraded the hydraulic capability of the 737. But this aircraft, you can also lower the landing gear by gravity. There's a lever you pull up and the thing falls down. That hadn't happened. Now, this is entirely possible because the pilots are overwhelmed in the moment. The pilots are dealing with just trying to keep this thing in the air, seeing the runway. Remember, they'd been vectored, so they were heading towards the runway. They can see the runway. Their goal is just to get the plane on the ground as best they can. And we just don't know what... Yeah. Well, now we will find out because, look, this is, by the way, this is an old one. I just brought this in to give you an idea of the sort of thing that we talk about when we talk about the black boxes. This is what we're talking about. This is actually quite an old one. But it gives you an idea of the sort of thing. There are two of them on board the aircraft. There's the cockpit voice recorder and the cockpit data recorder. Now, both of those have been recovered. South Korea is an extremely sophisticated and advanced country and will be able to read them, along maybe with help from others, but it will certainly be able to do it. And that will tell us what happened on the plane, what flight instruments were degraded to the point of being abandoned, what the pilots were saying to each other, and we will find out exactly what happened in this crash.
Yeah, and then in addition to the black boxes, Richard, we know that two people miraculously survived this, and they were crew members. So their understanding of what would have been happening, perhaps more sophisticated than just a passenger, how helpful will that be?
It will be helpful because they will have known what area of flight the plane was in. They will have known what the captain may have said in the cabin. They will be able to give an idea of just how it... Look, I mean, it's awful to be discussing this, Rahel, but that message that was sent from one passenger to the ground. Now, obviously, an announcement had been made that there had been a bird strike, that the plane was now seriously degraded in its control capabilities. And then you take that and you add on to it what the flight data will tell us. I can tell you that the circumstances and the sequence of events here and the complexity of those events is way up there. This is one of those that we'll find out what happened, and my guess is that it's going to be the pilots did a bloody good job in very difficult circumstances.
Yeah, complicated indeed. And to that end, Richard Quest, we appreciate your expertise as we try to understand exactly what happened. That's Richard Quest. Thank you.